everyone, and welcome to BVM Sports Chalk Talk. I'm Lucas Semb, alongside Scott Procter and Matt Morris. We are back for another episode in one of the busiest times of the year, NBA free agency. It opened up at 5 p.m. Central Time on Monday night, and in just 2.5 hours, over $1 billion worth in contracts had been negotiated. But now, before we talk NBA free agency, there was a huge move in the league just days before. The LA Lakers traded for Russell Westbrook, creating a big three of LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Russ. So, Scott, the question is, looking forward, would you rather have the Lakers' big three or the Nets' big three of KD, Kyrie, and James Harden?
That's a relatively easy question there for me, Luke. Listen, likely in response to the Brooklyn Nets and the threat that the Milwaukee Bucks now pose, the Los Angeles Lakers have assembled the league's best big three, and this truly shouldn't be much of a debate, so I'll be quick here. You have LeBron James, who is inarguably a top three player in the world, even at age 36. Anthony Davis, who we all agree is a top five talent and one of the league's best two-way players. And Russell Westbrook, now Mr. Triple-Double, the former MVP, who plays harder than just about everybody night in and night out. The Lakers' big three is more talented than any other in the league, and they're much better defensively than the Nets' big three, with one defensive liability in Kyrie Irving and maybe even two in James Harden, depending on who you ask. There's no way, for the sake of this argument, that, Luke, you can disagree with me in terms of the Nets, considering just last week on the From Deep podcast, wherever you can get your podcast, it's available, you said Kyrie Irving wasn't even a top 20 player. And the week before that, on this very show, you said James Harden will be useless when the NBA changes some rules in regards to how fouls are called. So the Lakers have the league's best big three, and they should be favored to win the Western Conference now because of it. Matt, what's up? Talk to me, because like I said, I know Luke can't disagree.
Well, I'm interested to see what Luke has to say, but I'm just going to go straight up no. I don't think that this is the best big three. The biggest reason out of everything is both Milwaukee and Brooklyn at this exact point already have an extra year of chemistry alone, where they have worked together, they've figured it out, and they will be able to, understand their roles. You're talking about, LeBron James is a ball dominant guy, always has been, always will be.
Wait, man, I have a question. I'm sorry, I have just not kidding. So you said, are you categorizing the Milwaukee Bucks as a big three in this conversation?
Well, I believe others have also, thrown in Milwaukee's big three. And at this point, a lot of people have already said that Giannis, it went from Giannis doesn't have enough help to Giannis has a super team with a big three. So we're just going to.
Okay, that's fine. Let me just ask a quick follow-up question then to that. So you said the Bucks and the Nets have a leg up on the Lakers' big three because they have an extra year of chemistry together, correct? Yeah. Didn't the Milwaukee Bucks just win an NBA title in their first year as a big three together?
Yeah, they did. Okay. But also Giannis and Middleton have been playing together a little longer. Drew kind of fit the mold of what
AD and LeBron have been playing together, haven't they?
I mean, when they're healthy, that's the other thing. Availability is the best ability. And although, Brooklyn hasn't been able to do that either, you're talking about LeBron, who I believe played 45 games, and Anthony Davis, who played 36. That is not going to move the needle. Yes, Westbrook will definitely help out when if they're injured or if they need rest. I understand that. But the other thing is that if you look at it overall, offensively, the Lakers' big three is not better than Brooklyn, and probably is on. If you want to say it's on par, I'll give you that with the Bucks. Defensively, I would argue that the Bucks' big three is actually better defensively overall than the LA Lakers is, and obviously the Lakers are a little bit better on defense than the Nets, as you said. But the other thing that I just want to mention is, as great as Russ is, and all those players are, if you look at it, Russ has played with Kevin Durant, James Harden, Paul George, Bradley Beal, and really does not have a lot to show for it. To assume that he will be able to come in, he'll probably still do what he does, which is get 20 points, triple doubles. But is that going to overall improve the Lakers? I don't know if I'm willing to say that yet. As much as I like Russell Westbrook and agree with a lot of what you said, he is the heart and soul of a team. He always goes 100%. All that stuff is true. But then you're also going to have to ask, there's literally a picture going around of LeBron James guarding Russell Westbrook like he's Rajon Rondo from 3. and you're going to expect Westbrook to just kind of hang out on the perimeter when LeBron has the ball? Or are you going to ask LeBron to give up some touches and be more of a 3-point, kick out option as Westbrook drives to the hoop? Anthony Davis can do that. He's a pretty solid perimeter shooter, but who's going to give up that ball action as far as LeBron and Westbrook goes? I'm interested to see what happens. So I'm not willing to say they're the best big three right off the bat.
Matt, I'm sorry to say, but when I initially thought on this topic, my gut told me the Brooklyn Nets, but then I really considered the question. I changed my mind that I would rather have the Lakers, and for a plethora of reasons. Number one, I love Kevin Durant, but I think at this stage, he's probably the best player of all six of these guys. I think at this stage, he is the best player of all six. But LeBron James is still LeBron James. It's hard for me to bet against him because we've seen throughout his entire career that when the toughest times present themselves, he shines. And now more than ever, a seasoned vet, a high IQ guy, a better shooter than he ever has been, with these pieces around him when games really start to matter and when the tough gets going, he's really going to come through. And that's the difference between him and KD. LeBron makes everyone better. KD is just a great individual player. That's the biggest difference for me. And then you move down to the next two, AD and Harden. No questions asked. You know who I'm taking there. James Harden is probably the worst player of all six. And then it goes down to Russ and Kyrie. On the From Deep podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, we named our All-NBA teams, and I had Russ on it, and I did not have Kyrie on it. And so, Scott, I can't even hide about it. I can't lie about it. It's true. I think Kyrie is a great scorer. He's a great one-on-one player. But that's really it. Russ is more athletic. He's a better defender. He's a better rebounder. He's a better facilitator. And for LeBron, that's going to be huge. I can't stress that enough because he will be able to be a playmaker and take so much wear and tear off of LeBron's body throughout the regular season, playing as hard as he does. And that's going to be huge because we're going to see a different LeBron in the playoffs, one that's going to be the healthiest he's been in years when they get to that stage. So all the way through, I like the Lakers over the Nets in terms of a big three.
Luke, I knew you should have agreed with me, but I wasn't sure that you would. I'm very, very, very proud of you. But Matt, I just have to dead this Bucks talk. They've earned the right. They're the NBA champions. They've earned the right to even call themselves a big three. I'm willing to give you that. But for the sake of the best big three, when the Lakers big three and the Nets big three exist, they simply just don't belong. You can even say, I'm even willing to say, contrary to what Luke was just saying, I'm even willing to say that Giannis at this point is the league's best player. But if you go down the rest of the list, Anthony Davis has top 5 talent.
Scott, I have to cut you off here, Scott. Drew Holiday has looked arguably like one of the best players for Team USA thus far on both sides of the ball. So I don't really think that you can say they're not a big three, especially when Chris Middleton, and we've seen what he's done in the playoffs, the regular season. He answered every question about him this year.
I just said that. I just said I'm willing to say they are a big three.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you said they don't stack up, but I think they do stack up, which you did say, when you got the best player in the world, arguably the best player on Team USA, and Chris Middleton, who has become a bona fide star in the NBA.
Okay, well, I don't even like how you just said that. I was willing to go with you with Drew as one of the best players on Team USA. He's not arguably the best player on Team USA. He's not arguably better than Kevin Durant or Damian Lillard, or even damn near Zach.
We're not
going to go there.
Going back to the point, here's what I'll say in response to some of what Luke pointed out. I understand your disdain for James Harden, but when James Harden was fully healthy and running the point guard for the Brooklyn Nets, whether it was with Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving, it looked amazing. He distributed the ball extremely well. He ran that offense.
He was an MVP candidate for some people.
Effectively and efficiently. I expect him to do the same this upcoming year. And one thing, once again, I think one of the biggest issues that I have is when you look at the Brooklyn Nets big three, I think they all work well together. You can talk about defense all you want. The Lakers were a great defensive team last year. It did not do them a lot of good. They were one of the worst three-point shooting teams last season as well. And adding Russell Westbrook does not help. If anything, it might actually make them a less effective three-point shooting team, and that's an important part of any playoff run. As well as going back to my main point, I think that when you look at Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant all together, they mesh well and play off of each other's strengths. James can distribute, and then Kyrie and Kevin Durant can also create and just score on their own. I just don't think this big three with Russell Westbrook and LeBron James and Anthony Davis, I don't know if it's going to be effective because they're great players, by themselves. But we've seen guys come in, and it reminds me almost of that last year in Cleveland when they brought in Isaiah Thomas and Dwayne Wade and all these really good players that you thought that it was going to. I mean, why are you looking at me like I'm crazy?
Why does this remind you of that?
Because it's bringing in stars that you just think because they're so good, they're going to work out together, and then that team blew up halfway through the season. That's what I think is going to happen with the Lakers. I don't know if
right now you're trying to compare a washed-up Isaiah Thomas and Dwayne Wade, who is at the end of his career, to LeBron James and Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook, who has the all-time lead in triple doubles.
And still had an intact Kevin Love and other pieces on that Cleveland team. I'm just saying, I don't think that just because Russell Westbrook has been effective by himself and is a great player on his own, he doesn't tend to work well when added with other stars. It has not worked in the past. And if you're going to talk about Kevin Durant being the best player ever, James Harden, when he was in Houston, they were great together as well. Like, he was a great player as well. To give LeBron the benefit of the doubt, I kind of understand, but I'm not going to say that Russell Westbrook right away with LeBron James and Anthony Davis is better than a big three that has already been established for a year.
Sure. Well, it's going to be a long time before we can really find out, who's who, and we'll see who really wins the title this year. But let's transition and talk about free agency, as there have been a plethora of signings thus far. Matt, starting with you, you had a few you liked, the main one being Kyle Lowry to the Miami Heat. Break that down for us. What are you seeing there?
I mean, this was a move that was supposed to happen halfway through the season and probably helped Miami a lot as they headed towards a playoff push. Obviously, Masai Ujiri didn't get what he wanted. He waited. I think they made the right move as far as Toronto. Good job on them to get what they were able to get in that sign and trade. For the Miami Heat, this just adds another player and allows them to really make a push and shows that the Heat truly believe that how they were able to get to the finals within the bubble can be repeated. And they're kind of just doubling down over the next 3 years while Lowry is on contract and Jimmy Butler is still, you could argue, in his, late prime. And they have Bam really still rising and becoming a great player as well. They're just doubling down and thinking that they could make a run. I mean, last season, even though it was a bit of a downtick for Kyle Lowry, I'm willing to attribute that to, playing instead of Toronto, the change in all of that, and also the COVID stuff. I think it's affected a lot of players beyond just the bubble and whatnot. He still shot 39.6% from three. He has championship pedigree. In his 7 postseasons with Toronto, he averaged 17 points on 49% shooting and 34.5% from three with 6.3 assists and 1.4 steals. He is a guy that you can rely on, and I think plays well along with, Jimmy Butler and Bam, because those two guys work well within the 3-point line. When you think about adding, Duncan Robinson or re-signing Duncan Robinson and Lowry being a great 3-point shooter, it allows them to still have that spacing that they need to allow Bam and Jimmy to work within the 3-point line. And also, he just fits the culture. He's a hard-nosed guy. He's good on defense. He's willing to work hard. And I think he will just amplify that culture along with PJ Tucker. They're going to be a great defensive team. So I like the move. I like the way that the Heat have been working their offseason. And I think it's just doubling down and saying they're going to try and be a contender over the next 3 years.
For me, I just don't really see Kyle Lowry moving the needle because they're basically, sticking with the same guys, and they turn into an old age home between Jimmy Butler and PJ Tucker and Kyle Lowry, and then $90 million for Duncan Robinson. You can't pay $90 million to a guy who does just one thing well these days. He literally can only shoot the ball. He can't handle it. He can't play defense. He gets attacked. He can only play short stints because he does one thing. So $90 million wrapped up to him is outrageous. I just don't think adding Lowry is going to be something that makes them able to have a run per se. But that's just my opinion.
I understand. I'll just quick respond to that. As long as re-signing Duncan Robinson just means that they think that, one, this last season was a bit of a fluke. They had guys out for long stints of time because of, COVID protocols and other things like that. Jimmy Butler and Bam played unbelievably, uncharacteristically poorly in that playoff series against the Bucks. And basically what they're saying is they think that their shooting can get back to where it was during the bubble, and they can play that way outside of the bubble. And that's why you get Kyle Lowry, because he only amplifies that style of play and what they were good at within the bubble. Duncan Robinson, at the end of the day, 3-point shooting pays in the NBA nowadays. You pay your shooters. And if you weren't going to, they valued Duncan Robinson, and if they weren't going to pay him that $90 million, somebody else was going to. Yeah. And so, you have to do that to keep a team together that's been a playoff contender for the last, 2-3 years.
I just want to ask one quick question, Matt. I agree. I think the Lowry fit in Miami is a great culture fit. I think it's a bit expensive for Duncan Robinson, but like you said, shooters get paid in today's NBA. Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, PJ Tucker, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Herro's a sixth man. What do you see as the Miami Heat's ceiling as currently constructed?
I think they have a puncher's chance to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think we saw this past season that, anything can happen and a team can get hot. I mean, I didn't expect Atlanta to do what they did, but they got hot. They played well together. They played their style of basketball, and they got them to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't doubt that when you have a Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra and that group of guys, also keep in mind they probably won't be the same team by the end of the trade deadline. Riley loves to make moves. I expect them to continue, and Miami's always been a team that I just kind of respect, even if they're almost like the St. Louis Cardinals to me, where no matter what, they just figure out a way to be effective. So I think they have a puncher's chance to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they defensively match up fairly well against teams like Brooklyn and like Milwaukee for the most part. It's just about whether they, shoot their shots and hit their threes like they did in the bubble.
Gotcha. I tend to agree with that, Matt. So listen, day one of free agency did not disappoint. There were a handful of moves that I personally was a fan of, like Dwight Howard rejoining the Lakers, Jeff Green heading to Denver, and Devontae Graham on the way to New Orleans. But if I'm a Chicago Bulls fan, which admittedly I am, you have to be excited about what took place on Monday evening. Lonzo Ball is brought in the signing trade and elevates Chicago's backcourt alongside Zach LaVine as one of the league's 5 or so best units. Lonzo is a pass-first, athletic, get-out-and-run type point guard who will be a perfect complement to a bona fide star such as Zach LaVine. That backcourt not only got more talented, but better defensively with Lonzo, who is one of the elite defending point guards in the entire league. And the addition of Alex Caruso, albeit the somewhat high price tag, 4 years, $37 million, about $9 million a year from the Lakers. Caruso is another plus defender who fits with this backcourt and what this team needs. This foursome of guards, including Kobe White, who I think can bud into a legitimate six-man Lou Will type role, will allow Billy Donovan to always have a defensive-minded guard opposite Zach LaVine or Kobe White, who are both elite offensive weapons in their own right. You combine those 4 guys with one of the league's best big man and all-star Nikola Vucevic, Patrick Williams, who showed real flashes as a rookie, Thad Young, Lauri Markkanen, who the latter two can honestly truly still be flipped for something more important. The Bulls have a roster that should be a legitimate 8 seed at worst out east. And considering the Bulls haven't made the playoffs since Jimmy Butler was in Chicago, it's a pretty big deal.
Hey, the life of a Bulls fan. We're getting excited about Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso. Let's move down I-90. Let's move down I-94 to a team we can be excited about, the Milwaukee Bucks, reigning NBA champs. But I want to talk about Bobby Portis to start. He really showed that he cares about the people that care about him this free agency period. Between Portis and Milwaukee, the fans, the organization, it's a perfect marriage. He came, had the best individual year of his career, won a championship, became a Milwaukee icon, and everything was like a Hollywood script. Then free agency rolls around. Bobby says he's looking for $15 million a year, but no, that's not the case. Those reports were just wrong. Bobby came back for $9 million over 2 seasons with a player option in there. The Miami Heat were offering their mid-level exception of $9 million for 1 season. He took a 50% hometown discount to continue being a guy who has the keys to the city. And aside from that, in terms of basketball, he's one of the best stretch bigs in the game. He can step out and defend a guard. He's truly one of the best reserve bigs in the game right now, and who would probably be starting on a lot of teams. But he wants to run it back, and it's awesome. But now let's talk about PJ Tucker, a little bit more of a sad tone for this conversation, but going to the Miami Heat. When I heard the news, I was really upset. And I was very conflicted. He gave us a title, but he was also a Milwaukee icon. It's like, how do I feel about this guy? When he comes back, do I boo him or do I cheer him? He left for one of the biggest rivals for a really cheap contract. Come to find out, the Bucks front office lowballed him because they offered, they didn't want to offer him the 2-year $20 million that was initially talked about because it would have turned into $30 million, considering the luxury tax. They didn't value PJ at that price. So all the power to him for leaving and getting what he could get. It's a hit for the Bucks in terms of his locker room presence and his fearlessness on that court because, they might find another guy who can defend. But do they have someone who's going to talk like that and get up in your face? It was truly that dog mentality that he talked about, and any team will benefit from that. And his fit in Miami is awesome, Matt. Like you mentioned, he is exactly a guy for Eric Spoelstra and a guy who has the same demeanor as Jimmy Butler. So good for PJ Tucker, but the Bucks did sign Semi Ojeleye late Monday night as a PJ replacement. He's 10 years younger, shoots better from the field and from three, and he's a big body defender. So I think the Bucks will be all right in the long run. But thank you, PJ, for everything. Sucks to see him go, but the Bucks front office did lowball him, so I'm all good with it. Unfortunately, I took to Twitter right after and I went crazy about it. But I later deleted those tweets because I had to see the whole thing before I went crazy like that.
So look, Luke. I think tell me exactly how worried you are and be honest, because again, PJ Tucker, you have lauded him all season long as soon as that trade happened at the deadline, how important he was, not only to what the Bucks do defensively, but just honestly being the heart and soul of that team, leading guys, motivating guys like Giannis, Chris Middleton, keeping them locked in. And again, PJ Tucker played 30-plus minutes a lot of those playoff games, especially down the stretch. He guarded Kevin Durant for most of that Brooklyn Nets series. How big of a loss is this really? Is this something that's going to prevent the Milwaukee Bucks from doing what what you expect them to do, rather, which is repeat as champs?
No, I don't think so. I think that PJ he was pretty lackluster on the offensive end, and Semi Ojeleye,
to say the least.
Yeah, exactly. And Semi Ojeleye will be better than that in whatever minutes he gets and whatever role he carves out. Defensively, though, I think PJ would probably be a little better than he is, but the whole idea is that he comes and replaces PJ's defense. But the main thing for me, how I was saying all year long, we need PJ in Milwaukee, be the perfect fit. He's so valuable. And all of that to say, I think he would have been great in Milwaukee, and it turned out to be the case because they had new pieces. They brought in Drew Holiday. They brought in Bobby Portis. They brought in Bryn Forbes. These are all guys who are coming here looking to win a title, trying to fit in and play with Giannis and this new big three, came here in free agency. PJ was the perfect glue guy for all of that. But now that they went through a season, they experienced the high of the high in the NBA. Our producer, Mike, said it best. The teacher did his teaching and now he's gone. They're not going to need him, to be around and understand how to navigate this NBA life of playing at the highest level. Now that they have their big three, they're bringing their core back. They're going to add a few pieces. I think for the most part, especially with the best player in the world in Giannis, they're going to be able to handle it themselves. And PJ Tucker said they got dogs. They just didn't know how to be dogs. And he taught them. So I think they're going to be okay. But obviously he's a fan favorite and his locker room presence, someone's going to have to step in and fill that void because people don't understand how valuable that truly is when you're really, it's your family for 9 months out of the year. Besides that off season, you're with them all day long, every day. So someone's going to need to step up and kind of take that big brother role that PJ Tucker was playing so well in Milwaukee.
I mean, I'll say this. I don't think you'll know whether the Bucks miss PJ Tucker until the playoffs because that's when he mattered. Even after they went and got him, he didn't really play a lot to finish the regular season. Yeah. And he didn't even, if my memory serves me right, that Miami series, you didn't see him a lot. The Bucks played different guys for different series. PJ obviously came into his own and kind of won that role of being the dog and that icon in Milwaukee, like Luke said, in the Brooklyn Nets series. And then he held on to it for the rest of the playoffs. So I don't think it'll really become like obvious if the Bucks miss him until the playoffs. And also the other thing you got to think about is, well, if they're not going to pay PJ, they still signed Bobby for a respectable, extremely low amount of money to save them that taxpayer mid-level exemption. Use that. They have to use that. If they use that and it works out, then yeah, I don't think they'll miss PJ. But there's still some.
And I think they will. They have to fill out the roster. I don't think their mid-level exception goes without being used. And I would look at Victor Oladipo as a potential target for that. And if they get Vic, it's a wrap. That's all I got to say. But we do have to move it on here. There's lots more to be done in the NBA before the season starts, and we'll be sure to hit on all of it. But in the meantime, let's transition to the NFL. Obviously, the biggest news as of late is Aaron Rodgers restructuring his contract, coming to play for the Packers this season, and demanding a trade for Randall Cobb. Scott, what does Rodgers' return to the NFC as a whole mean?
Yeah, well, first off, this is the best case scenario for Packers fans this season, even if Aaron Rodgers' future in Green Bay is still up in the air moving forward, because, you bring back the league MVP to a team that is ready to compete for a Super Bowl. You have arguably the league's best wide receiver in Devontae Adams, an all-pro left tackle in David Bakhtiari, top 10 running back in Aaron Jones on offense, with one of the league's best lockdown corners in Jai Alexander, and a top 10 pass rusher in Zadarius Smith on defense. So there's no shortage of high-end talent on this roster to go along with Aaron Rodgers. But more than all of that, we saw Devontae Adams ride for and stand by Aaron Rodgers all offseason. And David Bakhtiari gift, Rodgers a tricked-out golf cart upon his arrival to training camp. Rodgers has the pulse of this team, its best players, and they know they always have a chance at a Super Bowl when number 12 is under center. But where my skepticism lies in terms of the Green Bay Packers' aspirations of obviously winning a Super Bowl is in their schedule, which is ranked as the 8th toughest based on teams' records from last season. After opening the season in New Orleans and against Detroit on Monday Night Football, the Packers endure a brutal stretch from weeks 3 to 12 that includes San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Washington, Arizona, Kansas City, Seattle, and the Rams, all before a late week 13 bye. Then they get Cleveland and Baltimore in back-to-back weeks in week 15 and 16. I think Green Bay should win the North because of how talented they are, even though I think the Vikings will be solid, and I think the Bears will actually surprise some people. But the Packers' schedule could prevent them from a number 1 or number 2 seed in the NFC, which is very important to what they want to accomplish as seasons end. So that's how I see Rodgers' return. It should be interesting. I can't wait for the season to kick off on September 9th.
I mean, for me, this basically, to kind of reiterate what Scott said, but this basically means that the 2 top teams from last year's NFC retain basically their entire teams. Tampa Bay and Green Bay basically both said, let's run it back. And Rodgers, that was really what the talking point would have been if the whole Rodgers saga had not gone on like it did. And not only that, but Green Bay did improve in certain areas. This is the deepest their own line has ever been. That's what Matt LaFleur said and has said during training camp. I like Cobb within LaFleur's offense. And then A.J. Dillon is going to step up and be a great replacement for Jamal Williams, who obviously went to the Detroit Lions. And then the other big important thing that I'm excited about, and what I keep hearing, is that new defensive coordinator Joe Barry has totally won the defense with his energy and the style that he brings to training camp. They like what he does. You add in Eric Stokes, and it sounds like Rashawn Gary is continuing to improve and be another guy that will help out Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith, who's looking to have a bounce-back season after, a bit of a downturn last year. And this Green Bay team should go in as, favorites to go back to the NFC Championship game for a 3rd time in a row, and probably go up against Tampa Bay if all things stay the same. I understand the strength of schedule is something to be worried about, but at the same time, those are all teams that Green Bay has beaten in the last few years with the team that they have. I am not worried about it, and I wouldn't even be worried about Pittsburgh as far as, a team that I don't know what to expect from them.
Defensively, though, at the very least, defensively, they're going to be formidable defensively. They're going to have one of the league's best defenses, one of the league's best pass rushes. Minkah Fitzpatrick in that defensive backfield is nothing.
Absolutely, and Zadarius Smith will probably have 3 sacks that game with no O-line.
We'll see about that.
I mean, I'll give you my take. I think it's easy that they're going to be a top team again. The NFL is returning MVP, has all the same weapons, plus Randall Cobb, who he utilizes, on those short slant routes and screenplays to perfection. People don't realize that Randall Cobb edition is not just, hey, let's get this former Packer back. He's going to make a difference on the field alongside Rodgers.
And
but I don't
Amari Rodgers.
Right. But I don't think it'll be enough to get them to the Super Bowl. They didn't get there last year, and the Buccaneers got better. The Rams got better. The Cardinals got better. Lots of teams got better adding pieces while the Packers essentially reloaded, and they weren't even in the Super Bowl last year.
In what way exactly did the Tampa Bay Buccaneers get better aside from just another year of gelling?
Well, they have guys completely with untapped potential who will tear apart the league when they get opportunities. Ty Johnson, Jalen Darden added this year, who they have been raving about in camp, who's had a huge camp. Gio Bernard is another great running back in their running back room. They have great pieces everywhere. They have so much depth that if someone gets hurt, they're just going to be able to reload and keep going. They absolutely got better with some big pieces. And like I said, also the Rams, the Cardinals, lots of teams got better with the Packers reloaded. And they weren't even in the Super Bowl. So all the fuss to me seems like it's going to be pointless because I think they can obviously win the NFC North, but I think the Vikings will have something to say about that. But the Packers will be a good team again, and that's basically that. But at this point, I'm over that Aaron Rodgers infatuation that a lot of people have, that like, oh, you have Aaron Rodgers, you're an automatic Super Bowl.
You've been over that, Luke. You've been past that stage. I'm not going to lie.
I just don't think.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. You finish.
No, I was just going to say, I don't think that's how it works anymore. There's a lot of really good talents in this league, and there's a lot of teams that got a lot better.
I got you. Matt, I was curious. Something you said that I hadn't heard before was Matt LaFleur saying that this is perhaps the deepest offensive line that the Packers have had, or that he's coached with the Packers. That's good to hear, because I'm a bit worried for the Packers' sake, obviously, about the departure of Corey Linsley. They're all pro.
Josh Myers looks great. Their second-round draft pick. He looks great in training camp. They've said that he probably is going to take over. And the other, thing that people don't realize, Dennis Kelly was a great pickup. That was a guy that started, I believe, all 16 games for Tennessee last year. He knows LaFleur's system somewhat. He's a guy that can be good on the run block. And the other thing that I cannot continue to reiterate is Elgton Jenkins might be one of the best offensive linemen at any position.
I love him.
So as long as they have Elgton Jenkins, it doesn't matter who gets hurt. They're probably going to be able to just plug and play, which is somewhat of what they did last year. And I mean, Tampa Bay basically reloaded as well. But if you want to just go tit for tat and say that guys step up, I mentioned, Rashawn Gary continues to improve. I think Eric Stokes is a great addition to that team. Amari Rodgers with Randall Cobb as his veteran guiding him forward is going to be interesting. Alan Lazard still has, I think, potential to reach. A.J. Dillon.
Another loss, though, that I think is big for the Packers, and I think it'll come to show this year. I like A.J. Dillon, but Jamal Williams is a dog. He is a good NFL running back who has never fumbled the ball in his career. Jamal Williams does not have a fumble. He takes care of the ball. He's a great pass catcher, and now he's in the NFC North playing for Detroit. So you're going to have to rely on A.J. Dillon, who hasn't had much work in the NFL, but you think to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they got Fournette, they got Ronald Jones, they got Gio Bernard. Like that depth right there, it doesn't matter what happens to one or the other, because then the next guy just steps up and they keep moving around. They keep moving down seamlessly through the schedule like nothing even happened. And like I said, I'm really excited to see what Darden can do, picking him up in the draft, because they have been really raving about him and his speed and how he can hit you with a quick slant. He can hit you deep. And that alongside Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, it's just not fair. It's not fair. And don't forget, they have the all-time winningest player in NFL history.
Luke, it sounds like you're ready to pencil in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to, represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
No, I do. I'm just saying this is one example. This is a team I'm hitting on them so heavily because they beat the Packers to go to the Super Bowl last year. The Packers weren't even in the Super Bowl last year because they lost to this team. This team got better in the offseason, and I don't even think they'll be in the Super Bowl. So that's what I'm trying to say. This is the whole point I'm trying to hit home, in that, I don't think the Packers are that Super Bowl contender that everyone makes them out to be. Again, I'm sticking with Rams Ravens.
Again, to be clear, I'm not sure that the Packers will win or appear in the Super Bowl, but they have as good a chance as anybody. Again, I think that schedule, especially weeks 3 to 12, is a gauntlet of a schedule, no matter how talented you are. And I think that'll ultimately prevent them to, probably, fall out of that 1 to 2 slot. Obviously, they were the 1 seed last year. And that's going to be tough for them to, get past.
Absolutely.
That's where I kind of see them. I still think they're going to be one of the top 3 or 4 best teams in the NFC, perhaps even in the entire league. But beyond that, we'll have to see how it shakes out. And obviously, injuries will always play a role in what happens.
Absolutely. Training camp underway, season right around the corner. It's a very exciting time, but that's all the time we have here today on Chalk Talk. For myself, Scott Procter and Matt Morris, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.